Hello, hello, how's it going today? Sifu Jay here, Artist of Truth. Interesting video topic today. Dharma talk, if you will. I've had a lot of questions and emails about something that I speak on from time to time, or that I've mentioned in passing. A big part of my life, my Kung Fu training. One of the things that has inspired me into the raw food lifestyle, vegan diet. And even on Facebook recently, several people asked me to do a video about Buddhism. And about what Buddhism really is, because I talk about it, and in the world, in the Western world especially, if you even mention something counter to Christianity, or maybe even Islam, people don't understand it, or Judaism. The three God religions, the main theistic philosophies. So I've had these questions about, what is Buddhism? Is it a religion? Is it a cult? What does it mean? Why do you talk about it? Are you a Buddhist? And they're all good questions. So, I don't know if I should say the names of anyone that asked me particularly, even though this video is for you. Because people can be temperamental about religion, or whatever they consider to be a religion. And be a little bit forceful in their dogmatic opinions about what their spouse or friend should be participating in, and things like that. So I will not call out any names, even though one of the people in particular is actually a family member of mine. So to get to the point, very hard to sum up Buddhism. Maybe you should approach me and come to a talk, or maybe to one of my classes, meditation classes, or the Dharma talks, or seek out my blogs, different things like that. Or lots of people more qualified than myself to talk about the subject. But from, I would say, the past 20 plus years of my life, meditating, formally studying Buddhist thought, along with Taoism, with Confucius, Lao Tzu, the Tao Te Ching, the different teachings of the East, Hinduism, the Vedantic text, Vedic text, coming into the Buddhism as more of a scientific approach to the mind. Through all of these years, I'm starting to feel like maybe I'm just getting the momentum going. And I've come to look at Buddhism as something not just religious. So it's hard to sum up that experience in a brief video, but I'll do my best to overview it for you. Buddhism, first of all, as you say Buddhism, people think, India, China, Tibet, Japan, Asia, Thailand, all of these, Bhutan, all of these different Buddhist countries, Vietnam, Korea. But Buddhism has been in America for a long time. More of a hippie movement, 70s, 60s. In the western United States, but not so much over in the Bible Belt in the South, in the East of America. but it's there. It's here. The Buddha, the one who became the Buddha, known as the Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, was a prince in India, in what is now Nepal, and of course had everything in his life. A human being, not a prophet, not a godson, nothing like that. Just a man who had every single thing that he could ever want, and essentially was lost, was trapped somehow, was suffering, and one day got outside of the palace and encountered great suffering. Witnessed people dying, people growing old, people being sick. Long story, I'm very much summing it up. And decided that he didn't really want to live the life in the palace, to become the new king of the kingdom and all of those things, and set out on a path that would eventually lead to him becoming known as the Buddha, to him becoming awake, studying all the different traditions, extreme asceticism, all the yogas, and living on a grain of rice a week and things like that, becoming very, very sick, and doing all of these things, and realizing that even all these different little religious paths and practices, and extreme punishment of the body, fasting, all of this stuff alone wouldn't really lead to happiness, wouldn't take him away from all the struggles and things that he had. And after coming to this realization that he had to turn to himself inwardly, and that all of these other little pieces of the puzzle could help, but all the extremes, going to whatever extreme in order to reach happiness, that you could go into these blissful states and these yogic, tantric meditative states, but they were only temporary, and you would come back out and you would suffer again. So with great resolve, he took a seat beneath the Bodhi tree and decided to not get up until he reached enlightenment. So goes the story, at least. And he turned inwardly and he meditated. And he thought to himself, there has to be another way. What can I do? What is the path? And he came to this realization that the middle path, the middle way, the straight and narrow, if you will, was the only path to walk. And that our life is already heaven, it's already blissful, and we're messing it up. And very, very, very short, and summing up the story here, it's just the story of the Buddha, not what Buddhism is, but he sits, he's tempted, all these things, and the story goes that Mara came to him, and Mara being like the mind, lustful thinking, passions, desires, all of this stuff, but written in Indian, the writing as an entity, like sometimes in the West being a correlation with Satan, but it's not the case, but simply a mental fixation, and all the desires, all the passions, things that you can't control, the lustful thinking, wanting to eat, wanting to be sexual, all these like crazy powerful things. Whenever he decided to discipline his body and his mind, and to release and forgive himself, to get away from all of this, all these things come out, all the judgment, all of this stuff. And he conquered it. He conquered it inwardly. And he woke up. He became enlightened, awakened. He didn't become a god, to explain that. He didn't become any type of prophet, founder of a religion, not intentionally. Just a human being whose mind let go we say to control the mind, but the Buddha let go. He released the control that was already there. All the conditioning from all the different religion, the traditions of his past. And basically said to him, I am the way. Not in the Jesus kind of way that, come to me, I'll save you. But more, I realize that I am the path. I'm jacking the world up. I'm messing it up for myself. Boom, I let go of all these things. I'm no longer suffering. I know everything. I'm awake. I can see into every dimension of space and time and all because my mind is released. And again, I'm just briefly summarizing and not by any way doing justice to what the true story of the Buddha. I don't have time for that. I could do an hour-long video and explain all of that stuff. Kind of glossing over it. And from this realization that, I'm awake and realizing the path to happiness, he thought that no one would believe him. Then he simply knew everything, and he knew how to live and how to be free and to be happy forever, and to release himself from the cyclic existence, pain and pleasure, regretting and planning and remembering and being lost. Just boom, snapped out of it, enlightened, the Buddha. And he got up and he went to find a part of the story that I glossed over. He was training with some of his homeboys, his crew. They were all doing this path together and extreme asceticism and all scrawny and all. And the Buddha got up and went, that's not the correct thing to do. Balance. No extreme on one side or the other. To do what must be done in that moment in life. He realized that. So he gets up and he goes and finds his crew, his former crew, his homeboys, and they're like, look at Siddhartha. He's all shiny. He went and ate. He broke the rules of the practice, the dogma. He's not starving himself anymore. He's not punishing himself in order to reach enlightenment. He's not thinking of himself as this insufficient, born into sin human being kind of thing. Even in the Indian traditions, very similar. Not the idea like in the West that we're like have some original sin, that we're this corrupt thing that can only be saved because we're this tainted molecule that has to be released from its suffering by some other entity. The Buddha realized that that's obviously a lie. So he went and ate, became all glowing and shining in this new knowledge that he possessed, in this release of the old mind. And he goes and he teaches his crew, his former buddies, the new path, the Dharma, the truth, the way. That the path to freedom lies in your own mind. We all have the same potential, the faculties as human beings now in this life, not in the next life, to liberate ourselves, to grasp it, true happiness, and not to be some numb out the way that, they had been trying to do with all the yogas and things like that. All the different fasting for long periods of time, starving, going into trances, things. That we didn't have to do that. That we had the ability to live in this world in this way, along with all the things that come in this life, and be happy with death around us, with sickness, with dying, all these things. If we just open our eyes and realize it's our experience and our mind that makes the difference. Our own mind, our own body. And he said that few people would do the work. And that his way went against the natural stream. Against the stream. Noah Levine, a Buddhist teacher that I like quite a bit, has a book I'm pretty sure, called Against the Stream. His meditation society is called Against the Stream Buddhist Meditation Society. There's a lot involved in that, because it's against the natural stream of thought to believe that we actually hold the power right now in this life without needing some metaphysical savior to release us from our troubles and our transgressions, that we have to do the work for ourselves. And I'm simply explaining the Buddhist idea. So his buddies, they joined the crew and became Buddhist per se. At that time, it would not have been called Buddhism. It was simply the Buddha, the awakened one, the one who had released his mind, who could see and know everything. And this new path, this new way of being the way, at least in India, the new thing. So, I don't want to go too much into the story any further. I'll save that for another time. My friend the wind here probably messing up hopefully not messing up too much the mic here, so you understand me. Showing up to lend a comforting touch. So that's pretty much how the Buddha came about. I just wanted to kind of shine across that for you, to turn a phrase. But all the teachings are very, very in-depth, but I wanted to explain a little bit in a very crude way how the Buddha came about. He wasn't born of a virgin. You know, later when the Western people encountered the Buddha, all the priests and things, when they encountered his teachings and the writings and all the stories about the Buddha, they kind of tweaked them into that need for a god, a figurehead, a prophet, and they have to be like saintly and like not of the world, all like shiny and untouched by the dirt of this dimension. So they recreated some of the stories and tweaked them as they came into them, made him like Jesus, like his mother, danced around in a circle, and he was born from her side and went fully like a 3-year-old toddler walking and already teaching Buddhism. Ridiculous stuff, you know, but we need that. We need some alien life form to pop in and tell us the right way and what to do. And if anything, the Buddha was saying that's nonsense. He was very fond of saying, "Don't even believe me. I'm showing you this way, telling you that you have the ability to do all of these things. You already possess them. You have to kind of trim away all of the layers of conditioning and nonsense and lies. All the things of the past that weren't necessarily lies that people just fall into. In the Buddhist time, there was the caste system that women weren't as good as the men. The same thing always in all the cultures, especially in the Christian culture. And, you know, if you're not lying to yourself in the Bible, just read the Bible or any text in the theistic religions, and women are like the doormats of society, and even in every single culture, except in some of the tribal cultures, not so much. The woman was revered and held up, you know. And in the Buddhist time, the woman was very important as well. But you know, the caste system, racism, classism, and in Buddhism and in India, there was definitely there. And the Buddha was snapping that. We all have the same potential. You know, I'm not trying to step on anyone. I'm just being real. If you look at the other traditions that, you know, and even now, if you go into some poor southern neighborhoods in certain areas and look at the churches, and the women, you know, sit like behind the man or off to the side with their straight long hair and their particular dresses, and you know, there's all these rules that we get caught up. We think about religion. We really get caught up in rules and guidelines and dogma, and we talk about everything, and we don't really do anything. We get in this whole like philosophizing mentality about what we should be doing, and we speak so much and we do a lot. less. And we set up these, you must dress a certain way, you must act a certain way. Some of my teachers in all of the different traditions have been monks. Some of them have been, look like skinhead tattooed Nazis. Some of my greatest teachers, actually, all tattooed, smooth. Others having very long hair. Some of my teachers were women, some were men. Some were even children, believe it or not. In my 36 years alive, I've experienced a lot. But to move a little forward, and I can get caught up in some things. I don't want to get dragged down and scattered at all. The essence of Buddhism is the training of the mind, I believe. It's correct to say that it is a religion and it's not a religion. That it's a philosophy and not a philosophy. It's an experiential philosophy, but it's an experience more than anything. It's an action, something you do, for me. But it's not about, for my Christian brothers and sisters, to take the fear away from you. Buddhism, it really is more of a scientific approach to living, to the mind. And this teacher, the Buddha, never proclaimed divine right, or that he was given knowledge from any supernatural being. If anything, he denied it openly everywhere. He was considered a little bit of an atheist of his time, because he renounced all of the gods in the pantheon of God traditions, and said that there was no thing outside of yourself that could help you. And he didn't mean that in a pessimistic way, like there was no essence of life. That's why, that's a whole other video I'd have to go into about the interaction with the universe and whatever the source of all energy and intelligence is. But for the most part, that all of this playful energy is there, but it didn't have the power really to change you. That you had to do the work. You could be inspired by all of these great things and traditions, but that you had to really investigate for yourself. Yet meditation, being mindful of our speech and our actions, not all of the things that well before Jesus walked the earth, or the same tenets of nonviolence, of the straight and narrow, and being kind to your neighbor and loving your enemies, things like that. The Buddha was saying these things. Confucius, actually, even before the Buddha. So all of these great teachers have been saying these same things. But as we move forward into now a little bit and escape just the story of the Buddha, I wanted to clarify that Buddha is not God. He is not the God of Buddhism. He is not the Jesus even of Buddhism, where he's the prophet. He's not the Muhammad. He was just a man that lived into his 80s and died, teaching. Everywhere he went, teaching. To be mindful. This mindfulness training. Let me slide my camera here around a little bit. Teaching this idea that self-liberating, we can change our own lives if we can just get our minds around to it. Freedom. That I don't need anything other than myself. And again, and not in a pessimistic way, we need everyone. That's why everyone is important. But we also need all the insects and all the trees and the things that we don't think of as sentient beings, living, feeling beings, to explain what sentient means. Conscious of itself. But he also recognized that we're part of a food chain. Although he recommended a vegan or vegetarian diet, the Buddha didn't always eat as a vegetarian. If he went into areas and he begged for his food, obviously. Just carried around his bowl and his robe, teaching. Sometimes he was given meat that was prepared, ahead of time. But if the animal had been killed for him and all, he wouldn't accept it. So there's a long tenet in there. So he advocated a vegetarian lifestyle, meditating, not getting the energy of the dying flesh, so on. But he wasn't like some dogmatic drill sergeant who would say, "Oh, I can't have this." He accepted that we're all a part of a cycle in life. But Buddhism can be experienced very simply by meditating, by being mindful, releasing the burdens of the mind. As hard as it may sound, every day we get up, we clamor and scatter about to go to our work, and for a moment, if we have children or a spouse or a loved one, we pass them. Our mind grabbing our keys, running out to the car, gotta go to work, go get into the mill. I'm gonna leave there, I gotta go teach. I'm gonna run over here, I'm gonna change the world and teach a class on meditation. Or if you're doing something else, I'm gonna go to the gym, I'm gonna go see a movie, I'm gonna scuttle about, go buy the new American Eagle shirt, go buy the new iPhone, new Samsung Galaxy S. We just maybe if there is a reincarnation, we come back as a beetle because we're in our cars all the time. We come back some like little bug with a shell around us. And we never consider our life, or that we are slaves to our society, falling into patterns, habits. Me too. I'm surely not trying to get high on my pedestal here. I'm right there with you. I'm trying though. I've glimpsed the liberation little. I spent time away in a place that not many people around here may experience, but two places, one good, one not so good. One by choice, one not. And there's a lot of people in those same situations, and even in this terrible environment of slavery sometimes in which we live, it's slavery of the mind, a fixation on an idea. We believe our leaders. We get in politics, even on social media sites, and see these people that are just ranting about politics and like how this person's messing up everything because they're like this crazily Muslim politician, or this black guy that shouldn't be doing something, or this white guy that's just like a super rich Republican, or like anything, this racist nonsense coming from black people and white people and Mexican, everyone. But those people together, the politicians that are black and white and Hispanic or whatever, they're all sitting there together, living the good life, making us all crazy. Teaching us to hate each other, but telling us on television not to. And the idea of Buddhism, that was going on during the Buddha's time, the caste systems. If you were slightly lighter than the slightly browner Indian, you were in a higher caste system, so on and so forth. And they were teaching these things, and the Buddha was just, wake up. We're all in this together. Not to be cliche, as it is said continuously, we are all one family. We have to be mindful. If you become mindful of your speech and your actions, you become mindful of everything. Of your leaders, of your government, of your food, of your speech, of your life. You still scuttle about to work if you have to. But can you not dream and imagine of something different? That's Buddhism. if I can go so far as to say that. What the Buddha taught, the path to liberation. If you cannot realize, if you do not realize that you are in prison, you will not seek freedom. But the moment, trust me very much when I say this to you, my friends, the moment that you realize I'm in prison, I'm a slave. When your eyes pop open to the master's whip, then you run for your life. You do whatever it takes to free yourself. Whatever it takes in the sense of, if the truth shakes to the very core, the foundation of existence and everything that you held sacred, no matter what you come across, no matter what happens in your realization, if it's real, if it's the truth, you run for your life. Freedom, you seek it to the very end, in the next life, in the next dimension, as long as your energy persists. In whatever way that is, I'm not going to pretend to get into the metaphysical and tell you what life is and all of that. But to be free from the whip, and we are, trust me, we are there. That's Buddhism. That's one aspect. There's a particular practice in Buddhism called Lojong in the Tibetan tradition, mind training. It's all of these ways to see that whip, to learn to see the wall around you so that you can actually climb over it. Because when we get close to that boundary, we're redirected, or the boundary moves further away and we stay more in our prison. And it's not about conversion. You could be a Christian. It'd be very hard. You could be devout Christian and be an avid student of Buddhism. Telephone. The Buddha. You could be Jewish, Islamic, and Muslim, and be a student of Buddhism. But I send to you this warning that if you do become a student of Buddhism, very soon you probably will not identify with your religion. You know, I very much could identify and call myself Buddhist. Been an intense student of Buddhism for all of my adult life, half of my childhood. Also been I guess you could say a student of Christianity or modern theology, monotheistic religion. But a student in the sense of studying it, a lot of knowledge in those traditions, a lot of knowledge, a lot of good things. I hope that I haven't lost you. And I know I haven't given you rules or quoted some scriptures and all to talk about what Buddhism is. But that's what Buddhism is. A shedding away of all these rules, these chains. I can hear the resounding disputes already over what I'm saying. Think about it this way. I'm a licensed tour guide. I'm just a nerd, I guess. I love history and culture, so I went down to Charleston, took the test, studied a lot, became a licensed tour guide. You have to be almost on a college professor level of history in order to be a tour guide in Charleston. But all of the history isn't correct, but you at least need to know what they say. But in every culture, so I'm going to jump away from Charleston, but slavery is where I was going. Every culture ever had slaves. And lots of times those slaves had no walls, no fences. Even sometimes weren't even being beaten or anything. A lot of them were, but let me get to my point. They were given an idea. They were held where they were. They were enslaved by the idea that they were trapped, that they couldn't get away. Sometimes when a warring nation came in and took over another nation, they enslaved half the population. People just bowed because the king surrendered. And the other soldiers became the soldiers of the new nation, the slaves of them. And the women became the women of the new nation. And a lot of the people who weren't fit to be soldiers or work were enslaved. Those who were fit to work were enslaved. To build the walls, to build the trenches, to build the new nation. And it was this idea that enslaved them. I mean, think about, it's a touchy subject in America, but it is true. My ancestors being American Indian, so trust me, 500 Indian nations wiped out. They weren't, and they were enslaved. They were taken from here and carried over to Europe. They fought, and of course, all the Africans that were brought here. Think about all the plantations that had one master on it. 500 slaves. All these people, these human beings, singing in the fields. A lot of times, if you read the writings when I was studying the history, a lot of these plantation owners thought that the slaves were happy. They were in shock. They could not believe it when the slaves turned on them during the war. It was some of the writings that I just laughed out loud reading some of the writing from these plantation owners when they said that they could not believe that their slaves who had been so kind to them and so happy to work the fields turned on them, burning their houses and things like that once the army came through. But do you know why? 500 people in one area, one master, taking one person out in front of everyone and whipping them for doing something wrong. Boom, nobody rises up, nobody fights back. Because their minds were locked. They just couldn't even bring themselves to physically do it. I can't resist. I'm not supposed to. Are you with me? I don't. In a way, I'm shaking up. I'm talking about stuff that's sensitive. I can hear people right now crying, and slavery wasn't friggin'. Just be mindful. Listen to what I'm saying to you. The point is that they allowed it to happen. Outnumbered. They could have taken over. But an idea kept them in the field. Kept them under the whip. And I look at society lots of times just like that. We're in the field. We outnumber the master. And yet, all of us are under the whip. Blind. Afraid. Most of the time just ignorant. So the Buddhism is around, dances over that, steps over it. The Buddha's the guy that comes through and says, there's 500 of you and take a look around. Your mind, your ignorance enslaves you. Misknowing something, not like an intentional being ignorant or being negative, but simply knowing something incorrectly, being taught something because someone else really believed it. But when you start to get there a little bit of a sight of it, and you go, man, I'm ignorant. The world isn't flat. All of these tribal societies aren't just savages, they're people with souls. highly likely we're not the only sentient beings in the universe. We all accept now that when it rains, it's not, or when there's a thunderstorm, that it's not Zeus and Thor fighting something, like all these things going on, the gods rumbling and that making it rain. We all accept that as fact, and yet we grasp so tightly to other ideas that are just as ignorant. Think about it. That's the thing. That's Buddhism. Or at least that's what the Buddha taught. Buddhism can be many things. But what the Buddha taught, what the man that used to be a prince taught, is freedom from slavery. Slavery of the mind, freedom from ignorance. To stop misknowing something, to awaken. And when the eyes open, you run at all cost. And every old idea being shattered along the way. And the heart hurting as it releases, though, with this new knowledge that I was blind, I didn't know, I thought I knew. Do you understand? I hope that I'm not too scattered. I think, though, that I'm getting there with you. That's the Buddhist psychology, the idea. Buddhism being, in my mind, more of like a school, a little bit. A training, obviously, all the time. But a release, an experience, an action, a living. Liberation. I would define Buddhism that way. Freedom from slavery. And you don't have to convert. You don't have to do anything to fall into the path to practice Buddhism. You don't have to do anything except be willing to let go. To seek the truth, to open your eyes. To never believe me. Don't believe me. Trust me. You can believe me, but don't believe me just because I say it. Just like the Buddha said. Don't believe me just because I'm telling you. I could be lying. But you've been doing the same thing all of these times, all of your life. Hearing the same things, being told the same thing. Where are you now? At least listen to what I'm saying. If it sounds reasonable, then put it into practice. Try it. Study. And if what I say cannot hold up to the test, cast it aside. For there is no divine power pouring through me, no internal, no messenger greater than myself singing into me so that I may sing the message to you like the Quran. No divine gray-beard white king on a throne in a metaphorical heaven. And I know I'm stepping on toes, but I'm trying to give you the reality of what Buddhism is and what the Buddha would say. But no thing somewhere that needs to tell me in order to tell you. But through learning, through experience, through realization, through liberation, through opening the eyes and opening the mind. Being willing to accept something, no matter how hard it is to accept. Once the realization that this is the way that it is, that right now is heaven, here in this life, everything that we need, but we're messing it up. We're messing it up because we're lying to each other, we're lying to ourselves, we're pretending, we're allowing ourselves to stay in the field, to stay under the whip, when we're all thinking the same thing. There must be something more to life. There has to be something more to life. And then simply taking a moment to meditate, to sit and think, to really look at life, to listen to the teachers, the traditions of the past, whether it's Christianity, anything. But absorb from it what is real, what is true. Truth can't be given, it can't be told, it has to be experienced. It's like swimming. I can explain to you all day what it feels like to swim. But if you have a fear of the water, you've never touched it, you don't know it. You just start by simply getting your ankles wet. And the more comfortable you are, the further in you go. I hope that I wasn't too scattered. Buddhism is freedom. The middle path, no extremes. Waking up, meditating, being mindful. Being the master of our own lives. Learning from our teachers. Holding great respect to the ancient traditions. But learning from them, and once we realize that it's maybe some of this stuff was misknowledge, maybe some of it is a lot more knowledge than we possess now. Maybe we've cast aside the wrong things. Once we come to those conclusions, we do it loosely and never hold on to anything. That everything is changing, and then we just have to keep going with the flow. We have to keep going with it. So that's my take. Wow, 47 minutes of a take on Buddhism. But it was a request, and I hope that I fulfilled it without getting into, all the stories and the dogma. I just wanted to relate it in a natural way. So my friends, as always, thank you for your time. Boom, let me move that so I can see. I love everyone. I'll talk with you soon.